Welcome back to the Muster Point Beyond the Wire, where we shine a light on the organisations making a difference for veterans and chew the fat with those who've worn the boots and walked the walk. Today we're joined by Ash, a veteran who's been through the ringer with addiction, turned his life around, and now gives back by volunteering at Tom Harrison House, a specialist recovery centre supporting veterans and emergency service personnel. We'll be chatting about his personal journey, the life-changing work being done at THH, and what it really means to step up and support our own. Stick the kettle on. This one's raw, honest, and full of graft, grit, and hope. Right, Ash, thanks for taking your time out of your busy day to speak to us. Let's start off with telling us a bit about your service.
Yeah, so thanks for having me today, Stu. Yeah, so a bit of my service. So I did 14 and a half years in the Army. Well, I first served with the 9th 12th Royal Lancers, and then we later became the Royal Lancers when we amalgamated with the QRL. So that entailed me coming back from Germany and then being based in Catterick. And then I went on down to train recruits and the JCC course in Bovington. And then at the end of that, I transferred to the Household Cavalry Blues and Royals for the last 2 years of my career, just to be closer to my wife and children at the time.
What was your experience of drinking culture in the military?
So I went out to Germany when I had only just turned 18. So the drinking culture out there was absolutely massive. I drank a bit when I got out there, but I was very heavily involved with sports in the Army. So I represented the Army at every level in football.
Yeah.
I boxed a couple of times for my regiment. But yeah, to going back to the drinking side of it, drinking was massive. Lads would drink every single night. It was just the norm, to be honest.
Yeah.
And when you're younger, you can get away with it. To elaborate on that, I remember in Germany, there'd be a few parades where you would try and get back to camp for 7:30 in the morning, be on parade for 7:45, trying to get your uniform on. And then if people were missing, you get sent out on little search parties in Germany to go and find people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's horrendous, really. But it was all felt like fun at the time.
Yeah. Actually saying that, Steve was in the Royal Tank Regiment and he served out in Germany, and I'd done my B1 combat engineer course out in Germany. That was my only experience, and it was on a different level because most blokes tended to stay on camp and you were a lot more close-knit. Like some of the antics I saw going off in the block were crazy.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, like being in Germany, like you said, you didn't really go home except for big leave periods. So, I knew every single man in my unit, which lads in England thought was unbelievable. Like they're like, nah, you can't know everyone, but I knew everybody.
Yeah.
It made you closer. It made you a better fighting force as well, I believe, when you were out on operations and stuff. But obviously, all that time where you couldn't go home and see your family and stuff like that, the only thing you could do to fill your time was obviously drink and party.
Yeah. So was you married when you was out in Germany?
Yeah. So I literally met. So I'm divorced now, but I met Amy on my second weekend of being in Germany, and she'd just been there a week herself.
Yeah.
And we just hit it off straight away. And I ended up being with her, moving into a German civilian house with her, living with her for about 2 years. And then the minute I went to Afghanistan in 2011, I came back and I was all over me that I wanted to marry her, really. So I married her quite early on and had children early.
Yeah.
I was only like 21, 22 when I had my little boy, and then 23, 24 when I had my little girl.
You said there you went out to Afghanistan. Which tour was that?
Herrick 14.
And did you notice a change in, I guess, your behaviour or particularly surrounding the booze when you come back off tour?
So I was still quite fresh in my career, but I was doing well.
Yeah.
I was obviously representing the regiment at all different levels in football, the corps and then the army side.
Yeah.
Then I finally got to go to Afghan to do my soldiering side of things. So I was doing well on my soldiering side as well. I was passing all my courses, went on to do like my snipers part 1 and stuff like that, getting all these sort of Gucci courses, I guess, because I was doing well at sports. And then I came back from Afghan. We lost one guy in our regiment when we were out there, a close friend of mine. And leading up to our tour, I'd lost numerous other mates from other regiments that I knew quite well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when I came back from Afghan, I didn't feel that phased by anything
Mm,
if I think back to it. But actually, yeah, I was probably drowning stuff out via booze,
yeah.
and it was very acceptable. There was a period of time where we all got back to Germany, and people started dabbling with Class A's as well, sort of
Okay.
under the radar, cocaine and stuff. Yeah, that went on for maybe 3 or 4 months, and then it sort of fizzled out.
Yeah.
So yeah, as a young lad, that was my sort of first interaction to getting blind drunk or taking substances to block out what was in my head.
Yeah. And just remind me, how old were you at this point when you returned from Afghanistan?
So God, 2011, come back. So 22.
Okay. So you come back to your unit in Germany,
Yeah.
and you mentioned you ended up back in the UK, did you?
Yeah, so we came back the end of 2011 from Afghan, and then we had another 3 years in Germany,
Yeah.
where quite mental, to be honest, just making the most of life, really, yeah, and getting on as much sport as I could. But going out downtown was a lot more boisterous from all the regiments. A lot of the regiments deployed to Afghan from our camp at the same time, so there was a lot of fighting going on,
Yeah.
like regiment rivalry. And then when they started doing the defence cuts, they told us our regiment would amalgamate with the QRL, who were based in Catterick. So that was in 2014. I went back, and
Yeah.
the regiment officially amalgamated. I think it was the start of 2015 or the back end of 2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which camp were you in, based at in Germany?
I was in Humour camp, so just up from Bergen-Belsen. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so I was situated 500 metres from Bergen-Belsen concentration camp.
Yeah. Yeah. Hona was one of the places I'd done a tour of when I was out there for the 10 weeks, because I had some mates at the engineer regiment that was there, and it was just mental. Like the squadron bar
Yeah, you
was,
had 3-2 engineers there.
that's it, yeah. Because their squadron or the
Yeah.
squadron bars were above like the offices. I know when I went to Osnabrück, the squadron bar was below the accommodation, so it's like it's on you. It's just everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, every squadron had a squadron bar, and there'd be different nights on, or you could go in there most nights, to be honest. And then
Yeah.
you'd always end up downtown. And then when I first got there, town wouldn't shut until 8:30 in the morning. So you come out legless, and people were walking their kids to school and stuff. It was
Yeah.
quite
Bloody
mental
hell.
as a young lad seeing that. Yeah, and then they changed it and made town shut at 3. But obviously outside of camp, we had these. Well, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it on here, but we had 5 whorehouses directly outside of camp,
Yeah.
literally 20 meters from the front gate, which
Yeah.
we then all started pouring into there to drink until 08, 0900 in the morning.
Yeah. 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 I may well have frequented the places you're on about when I was in Hona.
Yeah.
But it's just mad, isn't it? So you come back to the UK, and you posted to Catterick, did you say?
Yeah, Catterick, and I never experienced the army in England at regimental duty.
Yeah.
Obviously, in training I did, but it was mad. As soon as the weekend came, everyone's in the cars, they're gone.
Yeah.
My wife, she was still in the army at the time. She was based in Somerset, so
Bloody hell.
I wasn't really making that drive all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was stuck on camp quite a bit at the start, and it was like a ghost town. You might see 5 other lads there,
Yeah. Did that frustrate you?
and it's
Coming
just
from Germany?
demoralising.
Yeah.
You go to work all week, and then there's nothing to look forward to on the weekend either. And then I guess that's when things started to settle down and start bothering me in my own head, to be honest.
Yeah.
When I had too much time to just sit with myself, I couldn't really sit with myself and be comfortable.
Was you still playing sport at the time?
I was, but obviously the amalgamation of the 2 regiments was such a big thing. A lot of stuff was put on the back burner. So during this period, my ex-wife now, she was going through postnatal depression with my
Okay.
daughter.
Yeah.
After about 12 months of being in Catterick, my colonel was forced to send me to, I think it was it one Army Air Corps in Somerset where my wife was posted,
Okay.
and to go and support her for a couple of months.
Yeah.
So things in my career started to take a turn then. I've gone from golden boy to the colonel being forced to send me to go and help my wife out.
Yeah.
And my life started deteriorating at that point, really. My wife wasn't doing very well, and I was getting stressed myself. Things just the walls started caving in around me, to be
Yeah.
honest.
So you went down to support the wife, which couldn't have been easy.
No, especially when the regiment were angry with me. She was suffering really badly with postnatal depression and some of the things she would say to me. And I was in Catterick, obviously worrying.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I went down. It wasn't easy. She suffered with it for 4.5 years.
Bloody hell.
Big indicator to why our sort of marriage broke down as well, to be honest, my belief is. And at the end of that, when she started through the other side, I was left quite exposed, I think. And
Okay.
traumatic events in Afghanistan and traumatic events that had happened to me during my life,
Yeah.
things that I thought about every day anyway, they started to take its toll on me more so than ever had before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was just knackered from supporting her.
Okay. And how long was this after you returned from Afghanistan?
God, so the first little initial insight of me supporting my wife, the period you're talking about now, this would have been about 20 end of 2015, 2016,
Yeah.
which then resulted in a naval officer. She was on a Navy base,
Yeah.
ordering my colonel to then get posted to Bovington for 3 years as a posting, which was forced again, which didn't look
Yeah.
well on me. And then I went on to then train the new Lance corporals trying to become commanders in the army.
Yeah.
The junior command course was part of that team. Did a year there, and then I went up to train recruits for 2 years, which was really fulfilling. I started finding my feet again, and I was so busy. Nothing was really bothering me. My drinking or anything like that wasn't really taking its toll on me at all.
Yeah. I take it you were still drinking, were you?
Yeah, it's just part of the army.
Yeah.
Still, you'd have a drink on the weekend. To be honest, I'd have 4 or 5 cans every night.
Yeah.
That was just a normal. Maybe that was from Germany or so on. But at the end of that, I just finished, before I transferred regiments to the Household Cavalry to stay down south instead of going back to Catterick. I just completed my regimental gunnery instructors, which was quite a sought after qualification.
Yeah.
And I then completed that, went to Bulford with the Household Cavalry as they left Windsor. It was literally within 6 or 7 months, I started deteriorating massively. And this
Okay.
was then, yeah, things started happening out of my control. So I'd be waking up in the middle of the night and I'd be wet in the bed or having panic attacks or
Yeah.
not wanting to go outside and stuff. And I didn't really understand what this was. I got really angry with myself. So I started drinking heavily then
Yeah.
to try and control all this sort of unwanted behaviour. And within 8 months of that, my wife gave me the ultimatum to go in to the regiment and tell them what had been going on with me.
Mm.
And from that point onwards, that was me starting to get filtered out of the army.
When you say you getting filtered out, what do you mean by that?
So I basically had two options. I could go to my corporal major, which is the same as a sergeant major in the Household
Okay.
Cav. They have weird ranks.
Yeah.
But he was a close mate of mine, and he actually poached me from my other regiment off my crew commander's performance and said, "Come to our regiment, you'll be down south." So I didn't want to go to him and act all weak and say, like, "Look, I'm struggling. I don't know what's going on, blah, blah." So I chose the other option. I went to the Padre,
Okay.
and the Padre then made me sit in with my sergeant major anyway. And it was flagged up the welfare chain, and I was put into DCMH, which was the mental health clinic in the army.
Yeah.
And quite rapidly, I was then put on stabilisation therapy and then CBT, and then I was signed off for 12 months. At the end of my 12 months, I was then given a med board, which I was told I was being discharged for PTSD and was unfit for service. And then I had my last year in the army waiting to get out, and I had a lot of things happening that year. My wife became unfaithful to me.
Yeah.
I had a close friend die of a brain tumour. I fell off a cliff in Spain, 26 foot, and broke my thoracic part of my spine in 7 places.
Bloody hell.
And then I had a suicide attempt
Yeah.
after all of that had happened, and I was sectioned for the very first time.
Sorry, was this after you'd got out or?
I was still in the army. I
Yeah.
was just on my final year, as you're leaving.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I was completely off sick, had been for a year, and then my final year filtering out of the army, still off sick, trying to homeschool my children because of COVID. Wasn't washing, maybe washing once a month,
Yeah.
just struggling. Yeah, no haircut, beard coming out everywhere.
When this was all going on, because even though
Yeah,
you're in your last year, like you're still
yeah.
part of the armed forces, they've still got a duty of care. Were they not? Were they informed? Did they know about this suicide attempt? Did they know? Did they come round and check?
I had a few visits from two very respectful people. I know them well, and they come up and I put a bit of a charade onto them and be like, "You're right, yeah, I'm doing all right," and all that
Oh,
sort of
okay.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
But then obviously it all got blown out of proportion when I obviously had the suicide attempt, and everyone was put on high alert then.
yeah.
And at this stage, after coming out of being sectioned, this is when cocaine came into my life,
Okay.
and I just was on the back end of being filtered out of the army. And yeah, and then that's the next part of the story, my addiction to cocaine, which was very rapid, very
Yeah.
rapid.
Just quickly going back. So when you got referred to the mental health team within the army, was it mentioned about the problems with alcohol, or did you not recognise it as possibly that was part of the issue?
Yeah, I brought it up with alcohol, about
Yeah,
alcohol, and they put me on some camprosite.
yeah, yeah.
They had me on all these meds. Told me I was bipolar. They had me on bipolar meds. Within 6 months, I tried, I think, 12 different antidepressants.
Okay.
It's quite mental, yeah, what they were sticking me through.
It does sound mental, doesn't it? Obviously, probably knowing what we know now, but it's just ridiculous to like just feed someone loads of tablets and think it's going to be okay.
Yeah, and to be honest, I didn't really care. Like, I'd had a suicide attempt. I didn't really
Yeah,
care if I lived or died. So whatever they were giving me, I'd whack all of those tablets in, and I'd just drink heavily every day.
yeah, yeah,
Like, I'd literally get up and have a can because it made me feel a bit better.
yeah. So you said obviously the cocaine kicked in. So what happened?
So after the day I got sectioned, my wife left me, and I left my children and my wife in my married quarter, so my children wouldn't have to move schools. And I then had to move back to Tavistock in Devon, which is somewhere I escaped as a 17-year-old to join the army.
Yeah,
Didn't want to go back there, and the only option was to move into a little box room in my nan's house. Yeah, during that period, I remember starting to go out in the town, reconnecting with people I knew from my childhood, and not the good people, the bad sorts, really.
yeah,
And I remember being offered a line of cocaine, and that rapidly, I didn't really go through the normal stages of taking it once a month,
yeah,
maybe on a weekend. I went straight into everyday using,
yeah, yeah.
and
Bloody hell.
by the end of my using days, before I came to THH, I was on 7 to 10 grams a day,
Yeah,
heavily using. I'd spent my pension payout, 68 grand. I'd spent that in 4 months just on drugs, really.
bloody hell.
And it was just always in my head that I'd failed to kill myself by hanging. So I know what I can do, and that's just try and sniff myself to death, basically.
Yeah, I get
So
that. I mean, you look back now and you can definitely see that that is a problem. But when you were in it, did you see that it was a problem, or was you just so focused on the failed suicide attempt and sort of that?
so after the 68 grand had gone, I was pretty sucked into it.
Yeah,
And I tried so many times to try and not do it. And the shame and guilt of what I was in the army
yeah,
to what I had become was unbearable. So bad. And then it was sort of looking for excuses. Someone was angry with me, or someone said something I didn't like. That was an excuse to use.
yeah,
Or the real dangerous times were where I just completely had given up hope, and I'd use straight for like 6, 7 days. I think the worst time I had was no sleep for 8 or 9 days. I ended up in an ambulance, rushed to hospital with fits and stuff.
yeah.
I made many hospital visits, but I met my partner who I'm with now, Lisa, during my addiction. She stuck by me throughout.
Oh, that's
She's
good.
still with me now, a remarkable girl.
Yeah, yeah,
But it got to the point where I was 8.5 stone. She was having to pick me up and put me in the bath and wash me. I was like defecating in the bed at night.
yeah.
I had things protruding out of my rib cage, like inflammation from my lungs and stuff.
Bloody hell.
And I still have Obviously, you've met me, Stu, so I have big white patches in my hair from
Yeah,
the stress of it all, and my hair was falling out. My right foot is a different colour to my left one through the circulation problems through taking cocaine.
yeah.
And just my overall body was just shutting down. My nose is completely split in two down the middle. Yeah, just real bad, really.
So how did you get introduced or signposted to Tom Harrison House?
So the difference with Tom Harrison House compared to other services I had been in touch with down in Devon, I got put on an online rehab course early on, and I missed an appointment. I remember the lady rang me up, and she was trying to hold me to account, and she was shouting at me and all that. And I was in full blown addiction. I didn't care,
Yeah, yeah,
and it just put me off. So I just chinned her off. Said, "All right, see you later." I'm not asked. I didn't want any help anyway. The difference with Tom Harrison House was I just had to get on the phone. My mum and all of them had been. My brother was serving at the time. His sergeant major heard about this place, and Charlie started telling my family that they could get me some help. And
yeah,
then the only thing I had to do was get on the phone and say that I would come up here and I would try my hardest when I got here.
yeah,
And I was willing to try and help myself. And that was, as far as I'm concerned, that's the most input I had to put in.
yeah.
So I was sort of quite gently guided up here. And then once I got here,
When you came into Tom Harrison House, so I'd obviously graduated and I was still going up, and I think I was doing my equine therapy bit at Shiloh, and I vaguely remember when you first come in and you were a shell of a man of the man
yeah.
that you are today. So from you phoning or reaching out to Tom Harrison House, how long did it take for you to get in?
So with me, now obviously I do quite a lot of work for THH, so I see some of the other time frames that others have had to
Yeah,
wait to get in. I was quite quick, to be honest, about 3 months.
yeah, yeah,
That's with the admissions team working so hard to try and get the funding from all these other organisations and regiments and stuff to get me in here, which is such a hard battle. We still struggle with that now to
yeah.
get people in.
But it's amazing that Tom Harrison do that. I know from my journey, so I re-engaged with my local drug and alcohol service, and so it was my drug and alcohol service that actually funded me to go to THH. But as you rightly say, that if people don't have that support or that option, then they will work, or you guys will work tirelessly to find the funding.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing, like there was a few roadblocks as well for me. So there was people willing to give me money, but they wanted me to spend it in Devon. They didn't want me to
Yeah,
spend it in Merseyside, Liverpool. And it's just crazy, really. I
yeah,
was saying, look, the help is there. It's for veterans and serving soldiers and blue light services. Like I need to be with those guys, and they're like, nah, we're not going to let you use it outside of our remit. So essentially cutting someone off. But I was on death's door at the end. I could have quite easily died within weeks
yeah,
or a
yeah.
couple of months.
And people do,
Yeah,
don't they? I've heard since I've been working in the drug and alcohol recovery service down near me. I know several times where clients, in this instance, they haven't been veterans, but they've secured the funding. They're like weeks away from going to rehab, and they end
yeah,
up passing away, and it just breaks my heart.
yeah. We've had many on the list. Obviously, waiting. Everyone gets triaged and put on the list, and
Yeah,
then it's just basically a rat race for each individual case to try and get the money. And
yeah,
then there's been quite a few occasions where the money hasn't been raised quick enough, and the individuals died.
yeah, and it's
It's just
and
sad, really.
it's criminal that you're. I'm guessing it was the local authority or charities or whatever down your way were saying we want you to go to rehab down here when actually the the fact that Tom Harrison House is a veteran specific rehab and
Yeah.
therefore should supply the best possible outcome for you being a veteran. I just think like what
Yeah, where
it's just what that
where
shit
were they?
winds me up.
Yeah, well, where were they when I was going to Afghan? They never stepped in and said, "Oh, we want him to have a tour in Devon." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would have been quite happy to do that.
Yeah, definitely. So you finally get to the Tom Harrison House. Tell us about what it looks like a day to day.
Basically, my mum and my partner told me a bit of a fib and said, "We're getting you in 2 days early."
Yeah,
So I was like, "All right then." So still off my face on cocaine, and they got me in. My mum got me in the car, and we all drove up together. And then we went up there, stayed over a night in Cheshire. And I was like, "What are we doing?" And they said, "Oh, we just said you were going in, but we wanted to get you up here a
Yeah.
day early so you could sort of have a time out before you went in.
Yeah.
So we had a meal, and I had quite a fair few beers because I obviously couldn't get any drugs.
Mm.
And I rocked up in the morning with my mum and my partner both crying their eyes out. And as I walked in, it just hits you straight away. Like people coming up to you, "Oh, you the new person? How are you getting on?" And all the lingo with the veterans and stuff. And
Yeah. Yeah.
the first guy who I was about to go through treatment with, he'd been there a couple of weeks. I obviously won't name his name.
Yeah.
He came up to me and said to me, "Hey mate, like I'm the duty student today, and if you've got any questions, you can come and see me." And I couldn't figure out who he was, but he was speaking to me like he knew me. And then I ended up staying in his house.
Yeah.
And after once I'd settled down in that night, I then quickly realised that it was one of my sergeant majors from my unit,
Bloody hell.
which was quite crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
And then
it is such a small world because I remember, again, going back to when I was doing the equine therapy and you were a client, and I think it was a few weeks, and we were stood there chatting, and you said, "Oh, I'm from the
yeah,
West Country, Tavistock." And I went, "Oh, one of my best mates from the army's from Tavistock." And I said, "Tom Wellard." And you were like, "Fucking hell, I know him." And it's like, bloody hell,
yeah.
what such a small world, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that sort of drew me closer to you, to be honest, Stu, because obviously you mentioning Tom, and I went through school with his younger brother Jim,
Oh,
and
yeah, Jim, yeah.
Tom. We used to see Tom every now and again, and he was like that older brother for all of us. Do you know what I mean? He'd
Yeah,
come
yeah.
in messing about, and he'd gone off to the army, and he was like this big, hard sort of soldier. So we all looked up to him. But
Oh,
yeah, it was crazy when you said that you knew him so well.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But the big thing was, especially with obviously that sergeant major from my unit, the turning point in treatment for me was I was quite shut off for the first week and a half, and then I saw him deliver one of his assignments,
yeah,
and he broke down crying, and it was a mess throughout it. It was very emotional.
yeah, yeah,
Seeing that man that I would have normally like braced up to on camp and stabbed my tabs in at his door and called him sir, really broken down and crying, that made me then commit myself and
yeah,
say to myself, I've got to throw everything at this now.
yeah.
And I'm so glad I did. And it just proves that works, because I'm 18 months and 3 days, I think, today without a single substance in
Yeah,
me
well done, mate.
whatsoever.
Well done.
Yeah, thank you.
We've mentioned that, so part of the program up at Tom Harrison House, we've mentioned the equine therapy,
Yeah.
which maybe I'll talk about that in a different episode. But obviously you got your group therapies, you got a bit of yoga, a bit of phys, your one-to-one therapy, art therapy, all stuff like this. But
Yeah.
you mentioned about the 4 assignments.
So, like the main bulk of treatment is interpersonal therapy.
Okay. Yeah,
If that's in the group setting, or with your one to one with your therapist, maybe once or twice a week in the mornings, and then, like you said, you get when you've expended so many words and emotions out. The the therapists are very clever the way they do it, and they'll throw an art therapy in there,
yeah,
and you'll express yourself even further by like the art of drawing and stuff. It's very clever. Then you obviously have your assignments once you've settled in about the 2.5 or 3 week period.
yeah,
You then start going on to your assignments. So things like the first one you'll do is your life story, and
yeah,
that really brings you in closer to the groups, to your peers basically, and they get to know you from childhood all the way up until now on your journey here.
yeah,
So that's a really big piece. And then you go on to do your various other assignments, which look at sort of how you can regain your honour,
yeah,
and basically sort of looking at all your behaviours and what's got you to where you are.
yeah, yeah,
And then you round off at the end of treatment where you come to this point where you can identify when you're acting in a negative way, and all your negative behaviours. We call that your shadow.
yeah,
And you can identify who you are when you're acting in like the best version of yourself, which we call your gold. And
yeah,
that will be like your kind side to you, your loyal side, your honest side. And you put it all together, and you come out of treatment at the end with these two sort of sayings, your shadow and your gold, which you can carry forward with you now for the rest of your life. And it will always keep you self-aware. You can go back to it and see how you're acting in life at this current day. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah. I think I remember
Yeah,
the one of the toughest things from the program for me was the letters from the family, and even
yeah. So,
even even having to sit in the group room when someone else is going through it, because it really does hold that mirror up to you. It shows you what an arsehole you've been. You know what I mean?
yeah, definitely. So I had you get to pick what family members can do the family questionnaire for you, and I got convinced to let my ex-wife do one.
Yeah,
Um, my current partner and my mum, and
yeah,
they were all very different, to be honest, and they
yeah,
all hit very hard, very hard. But you come out to a day or 2 days later, and it it does reinvigorate you to get better, to get well. It revamps you
yeah.
to realise why you're here and what you're doing.
Because for me, I think it helped me, or it made me realise that yeah, I have been an arsehole. But with the other parts of the program, like you said about finding your honour and finding sort of learning about yourself, it was like, well, that doesn't define me. I'm not an arsehole all the time. Yes, I have been an arsehole, and I probably still can be an arsehole. That's the nature of being human, I guess. But it was just about recognising that and acknowledging it, and the pain I'd cause people. But it also showed me that I can build these bridges. I can heal, and the people around me can heal. It doesn't define me.
Yeah.
Addiction doesn't define anyone, does it?
No, I think one of the biggest things for me was it's brought me back to feeling and acting a bit like when before pre-army,
Yeah,
when I was a kid, and the sort of good nature I had as a kid and stuff like that. Where I've been wearing these masks for so long in the army and being a tough guy and
yeah,
wanting to fight people and all this sort of stuff. Whereas now I feel so much more at ease with myself, and sort of confrontation and stuff isn't a must or isn't a need that I need to scratch. I'm quite happily going by my business in everyday life,
yeah.
which is a massive change for me personally.
Yeah. What do you reckon was the hardest part of the 12-week program for you?
The hardest bit is staying committed to it, I believe.
Yeah,
For me, it was, I didn't find it hard coming to do it every day, but some days I didn't want to put as much effort in as I did other days.
yeah,
And if you can just keep pushing as much as you can into it, you get more out of it.
yeah, definitely.
So probably that. Obviously, it's 12 weeks of hard work on
Yeah.
yourself.
I think that was the eye opener for me. And obviously, people listening to this, like veterans or serving members of the armed forces, and you got that attitude of big bad hard man or whatever you want to call it, that sort of attitude, and actually sitting every day for 12 weeks, looking at yourself, talking about
Yeah.
feelings, talking about experiences, and really delving deep. It's hard work, like really
Yeah,
hard work.
you've just reminded me actually. If I could probably say the hardest bit early on for me was everything you do is evaluated by your peers, so
Yeah,
you'll constantly have feedback after something you've just said or an assignment you've just done. So that was very tough at the start because you just believe what you tell yourself at the beginning, but getting the perspective of another 13 people in the group, you quite quickly start to realize like some of the errors of the
yeah,
ways that you how you operate in life every day, and that's quite humbling, to be
yeah.
honest.
Because I'm sure you can
Yeah.
relate to when I say addiction takes you to isolation. For me, it was sitting in my pants on my own in my flat, not washing like yourself, like you said, twitching at the window. And
Oh, definitely.
when you're isolated on your own, like you've only got yourself to respond to, and then suddenly you're shoved into this situation where you've got I don't know what 10 people around you who have got opinions, who question you and say that's you being an arsehole and all this, and it's actually realizing that bloody hell, I did that was bad, because you've been telling yourself it wasn't that bad for so long.
Yeah, so, like, if I think back to it, it's so embarrassing and stuff, the level I got to, and that's why I would urge people now. If I knew years before it kicked off and got to as bad as where it did, so I think each individual sort of knows if they do have an issue with any sort of substance,
Yeah,
and if you are at that point, I would 1000% start seeking a little bit of help. It's
yeah.
not weak; it's going to save your life before you lose everything in your life.
And that's the thing, like, I'll share the details for Tom Harrison House, because just if you think you've got a problem, ring, and like you can be assessed. And I mean, I'd rather people be safe than sorry. It may not end up you coming to Liverpool and doing 12 weeks residential, but reach out and be assessed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, and then you're part of a family again at the end of it. Do you know what I mean? Which is always going to be here for you.
Yeah, yeah.
You're part of the graduates, basically, people that have graduated.
Yeah. So after the 12 weeks, now after my 12 weeks, I came back down south, and
Yeah,
because I've got family in that, but there is the potential to go on to secondary treatment, which is the Bridge House project.
yeah. So Bridge was set up before Tom Harrison House,
Yeah.
and it's all inclusive, not just for veterans; it's for civilians as well. And it's essentially for people who've been through THH. It's a little bit like a second stage of treatment where
Yeah.
you still have access to one-on-one therapy. You do loads of group activities and stuff like throughout the week or a few times a month. And you're in supported living accommodation where you live with a number of other people, could be civilian or veteran, and you have rules to abide by, like going to fellowship meetings, attending house meetings and stuff like that. And it does what it says on the tin, to be honest. Like
Yeah.
the bridges you back to society slowly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can, if you can fund it, or if you can get funding for it, you can come in and then be part of that family for up to 2 years, as long as you need it, really, up to 2 years. And then hopefully you'll be moving on then and starting to get your life back together. So I'm still currently at Bridge at the minute,
Yeah.
and I volunteer and do stuff in the office for THH, helping others coming through now.
Yeah. Because I know from afar, I saw your journey, and you were, after your 12 weeks, you were still heavily involved. And obviously, through my work at CGL, you presented to us representing THH, and obviously you are today. So there are
Yeah,
those opportunities to give back, isn't there? Like you won't be just
yeah, definitely.
discarded or, right, you've had your treatment, see you later.
No, definitely. And especially now, things have changed within the office. So there's a lot more opportunities. I'm the volunteer coordinator, so we have a team of volunteers that get involved for big events
Yeah,
or just simply doing things like me and you are doing now, like
yeah,
maybe a bit of a chat or presenting to others, other drug and alcohol services or people struggling within the community, so we can sort of turn the reds and give them the opportunity to get some help.
yeah, yeah. You sound very much like me, Ash, that I've found my purpose again in life. I think when I was in the military, I was proud. I'd meet people and I'd be like, yeah, I'm a British soldier, and it gave me pride and purpose. And after leaving the forces, yes, I had good jobs, I earned good money, but I mean, I was in construction, building roads and nuclear power stations, and it just didn't fill me with that same sense of pride. And coming out the other side of Tom Harrison House, I kept going up to Shiloh and volunteering
Yeah,
and done the equine therapy, and now I work for my local drug and alcohol service, and I found that purpose again. Is that something you could relate to?
yeah, definitely. So I will, just purely because obviously THH has saved my life with
Yeah,
addiction and all that stuff, and they continue to support me with my mental health and stuff. I do suffer daily still with PTSD,
yeah,
but I'm not self-medicating, and for that reason, I will. My partner Lisa's looking to move to Liverpool, and I'll stay in Liverpool now for the rest of my
excellent.
life.
Yeah,
Just so I'm quite close to the community around here
yeah,
and have that support and that I can give back as well. Do you know what I mean? On a daily sort of routine.
yeah. And it's just worth noting, like I said, I moved away, and I didn't feel any pressure that I had to stay on for Bridge. But by the same extent, even though I've moved down south, I
Yeah,
if I was, well, obviously there's the weekly grads group, there's the messaging group that
yeah.
all the grads are on, and I'm confident that if, say, I was struggling, I could phone up yourself or Dougie or THH and say, shit, I'm in the shit here, and people would have my back, whether
Oh,
that's
100%. That's completely right. Yeah, 100%. And just to elaborate on that as well, like you have many a times come back up here, and so many graduates who've moved back to their homes. As soon as you come up, you are fully back in the fold. Do you know what I mean? It's like you've never gone away.
Yeah.
Like there's no difference from me being here daily to you being back at home. We're all equal and we're all on the same level. Do you know what I mean? That's
Yeah,
what I like
definitely.
about it.
So there's other things that Tom Harrison House are involved in. I know, and as I said to you, I always forget about it, but there's the Veterans Retreat, which is funded by the Armed Forces Covenant.
So we do a number of retreats. We do a graduates retreat for THH, and then we now do an all-female retreat as well.
Yeah.
So the retreats are currently up in like the Lake District, Lake Windermere, around there.
Yeah.
It's a more in-depth look at yourself, to be honest.
Yeah.
You go up, you're back in a group setting, and you'll go through some real big live processes where everyone's involved, sort of acting out scenarios and stuff.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you'll be out in nature. You do cold water therapy in the morning, jumping into the lake. You do a bit of Wim Hof breathing, and it's just a lovely retreat, to be honest, where you can sort of search a bit deeper within yourself.
Yeah. And just to confirm this, these retreats aren't specifically around addiction.
No, so loads of things get brought to the table. Could be a death of a family member that you're struggling with. Could be just an emotion that keeps cropping up for you, and then they start looking into why that's come up and where it originated from. It's an all-round brilliant retreat, and like you said, the Armed Covenants Fund pay for that, so it's a free retreat granted to the graduates, and some people have come onto these retreats who are waiting to come into THH as well, just to get a little bit of a feel of what the program might be like.
You said there that it's the graduates retreat. They also do just a purely veterans one, don't they? So you don't have to have been a graduate. You don't have to be looking to get into THH.
Yeah, sorry. So that's what I mean.
Yeah,
that's what I meant. So yeah, for veterans. Veterans.
Yeah, and as you said, there's no cost as long as ideally you can get yourself to Liverpool. Then it's all paid for.
Yeah, you'll jump on the bus with the team. You'll get transported up there and transported back to the office, and then you can make your own way home from there. Yeah, all the food and everything supplied whilst you're there, and accommodation and everything like that. You just need to bring your clothes
and yourself.
Yeah.
And these run over weekends, am I right? Long weekends?
Yeah, I think there's probably maybe 5 or 6 a year.
Yeah.
In total, yeah. But brilliant experience.
Yeah.
And they so they do obviously an all-female one as well.
Yeah.
The veterans ones for both males and females. And then another one they do, which my mum and my brother's been a part of, is the family retreats, which are very insightful stuff that's going on in their lives, and also a bit more education around addiction and things. So they can sort of have the story explained to them, and they can understand it a little bit more about what their child, brother, or siblings been through.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that families retreat because my mum and dad and my missus went up there for the families retreat, and I mean, my dad is somebody that said he'd never get in a room on his own with a therapist. It's so far removed from his sort of day to day, and even like I think I could probably count on two hands the number of alcoholic drinks I've seen my dad have in my life. Obviously, his understanding of addiction was so hard for him to comprehend. Yet he had the courage to go up there and do it, and I think he, not that he'll admit it, he got a lot out of it. He honestly did. So yeah, because that's the thing, isn't it? It affects, well, like we've said today, addiction doesn't just affect the individual, it affects everyone around them, and they need to heal as well.
Yeah, definitely affects your family members, society as a whole, all the carnage you cause to your local communities and stuff. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I'm obviously currently in the bridge. I volunteer and give back to THH at the minute. Like we spoke about in detail what the program's like. I'd urge anyone who has an issue or who's in a difficult spot to definitely get in touch.
Yeah.
And just that's on the recovery side of things, but it's given me so many more things back on the football pitch. I play for the Everton and Liverpool military vets, and I'm in the England veterans team, which I'll be in the World Cup next year.
Nice.
I've completed triathlons for THH, and I'm heading up the event this year.
Yeah.
and just so many opportunities that come from living a clean, healthy life.
Yeah.
Really.
And that's the thing. By the sounds of it, Tom Harrison House has allowed you to get your life back. It saved your life. I think you already said that.
To be honest, I feel like I've been propelled like back into how it was before, and some. To be honest, I'm operating now on a level I never did in the army or anything like that. I've got happiness behind me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably it. To be honest,
if there's one thing you could say to someone that's listening to this that thinks that they may be struggling with alcohol or substance addiction, what would it be?
So if it's themselves or even someone who they know, I would 100% just get in touch. Speak to some of the guys and start the journey from there. And if you sat there trying to work out if you have got a problem, well, you probably have.
Yeah,
if you sat there trying to work it out.
Yeah.
So it's hard to explain what your life will go from what it is now and what it will become once you get this help and you get connected to a bigger family again. If you're out the forces and you're quite isolated, this is a massive loving family.
Yeah.
But just gives you as much as you give back to it.
Cheers for that, Ash.
Yeah, thank you.
I will speak to you soon.
Yeah, wicked.
And that's it for this episode of the Muster Point Beyond the Wire. Massive thanks to Ash for sharing his story and shining a light on the brilliant work being done at Tom Harrison House. If you're a veteran, part of an organisation supporting those who've served, or just someone with a story worth sharing, we want to hear from you. This podcast is all about real voices, real experiences, and building a community that's got each other's backs. Drop us a message, get involved, and let's keep the conversation going. You can find us on Facebook, X, TikTok, YouTube, at the Muster Point Veterans, or email us at stu@themusterpoint.org.uk. Until next time, look after yourselves, look out for each other, and remember, together we can ensure no veteran is left behind.